Hello, welcome back. My name is Jason, and I'm going to be reviewing The Journey to the West by Cheng'en Wu. I believe that's the correct way to put his name. I know it says there on the picture, translated and edited by Anthony C. Yu, and that's why it's by Cheng'en Wu. Anyway, several years ago, I watched a movie. Can't remember the name of the movie. I think it was called The Librarian. Anyway, terrible movie. But it got me interested in The Journey to the West, and I went looking for a copy, a translation of The Journey to the West, because obviously I don't speak or read Chinese, any of its dialects, and maybe not so obvious, but whatever. Anyway, I went looking for The Journey to the West, and was kind of disappointed for a while, because they said that there were problems with the translations. There wasn't a good one out there, because for various reasons, either like it would only translate, there were only translations of the first 50 chapters, or they cut out portions of the book, or whatever it was. So I was really looking forward to, when I found this one, this translation, to reading it, because this was the first fully complete translation that had everything, word for, well, I shouldn't say word for word, because part of the art of translation is figuring out, when I say something in this language and the direct translation doesn't exist in that language, how do I get the point across? So anyway, I was intrigued by this because one of the things that I had read about previous translations was they left out the poems, and I wanted to read the poems along with it, have that experience. So one of the things that they do, and this is where the poetry comes in, it's very a visual language at that point. It's trying to get you to see these pictures, and the speeches can be very elaborate. But what happens is, when two characters meet and they're about to go into combat, they'll extol their virtues, and they'll extol the virtues of their weapons, and they'll do all these things, and then once they've done that, then their opponent has the opportunity to do the same thing. So these poems are actually quite important to character development, to understanding who the character is, because they're talking about themselves and how great they are, and how awesome of a warrior, or how terrifying a monster they are. Yes, it is boasting, but at the same time you get to see how they talk about themselves, and what's important to them, that kind of thing. So like I said, once I found out about this translation, I jumped on it. And I got all 4 of the volumes. As you can see, it's broken up in 4 volumes, because it's a pretty epic story. And another thing that I found while I was looking for a translation that I could read was just how often The Journey to the West has influenced modern society. And there are quite a few instances where Journey to the West has influenced our society. Anime, for instance. There's 2 that I can think of off the top of my head, Sayuki being one, which is very much a modern retelling of The Journey to the West, and then the even more famous and more well-known of the 2, Dragon Ball. The Dragon Ball story, if you know about anime, you know about Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is based on The Journey to the West, with Goku being Monkey. So there's actually a pretty good Xbox 360 game called, actually I don't know if it was strictly Xbox 360, but it's Enslaved. Odyssey to the West, I believe is what it's called. And that's based on Journey to the West, and the character you play is basically Monkey. So anyway, like I said, there are books, movies, television, there's all sorts of things that are based on the Journey to the West. So it's very culturally significant for the Orient, but also to us. As I think about it, there are 2 Netflix shows right now that are based on this. One is called The Badlands, and the other is The New Adventures of Monkey King. So anyway, back to Journey to the West. Journey to the West, if you're not familiar with it for itself, you may be familiar with some of the points, some of the plot of Journey to the West, just from being familiar with these other things. Journey to the West is about the monk Tripitaka. He was charged by the Emperor of China to go into the West, India, the source of where Buddhism was created, and he was supposed to get Buddhist scriptures and bring them back to China. So he made this journey with monkey, with pig, and with sand monk. And it's kind of interesting the way that this was set up. So the first part of the book the first part of the story talks about Monkey King himself. And it's all about how Monkey was born, and how he obtained his powers, and he just became Monkey King. And he's a bit of a trickster, but he's very powerful, very powerful. He had to be tricked and manipulated, in fact, into being Tripitaka's bodyguard. He was that powerful. But anyway, that being the case, they then recruit Pig and Sand Monk as well, and the 4 of them journey from China to the West to get the scripture. One of the main dangers, and one of the reasons that Tripitaka had to have these bodyguards before he went, was the belief that if a monster, a demon, monster, what have you, ate the flesh of a holy man, this being Tripitaka, they would gain immortality. And so the entire time they're going from China to India to get those scriptures, they're constantly running into monsters and other demons, villains, what have you, that are trying to eat Tripitaka and trying to manipulate the situation, because a lot of those monsters, they realized that if they ate him, they would get immortality, but they realized that Monkey was seriously strong, and going up against him straight up, they would be killed off just outright. That's how strong Monkey actually is. But the thing is that also clashes with Tripitaka himself, because he doesn't want Monkey to kill these things. He wants Monkey to keep him safe, but he's like, Monkey, you can't keep killing people. So there's this kind of conflict between the monsters trying to eat Tripitaka, Tripitaka trying to keep Monkey from killing the monsters, and Monkey wanting to kill the monsters and to keep Tripitaka safe. And so there's as I said, there's a lot of danger that goes on in there. Now, I won't say that it is the best story. It's definitely a good story. I definitely liked it. It was somewhat hard to get through, mostly because of my unfamiliarity with the visuals and the things that you know, just those concepts from Eastern philosophy, of which I am ignorant. I have taken some, I have studied a little bit of Eastern philosophy, so some of the things were not unfamiliar to me. Plus, like I said, I've read some of these things, I've watched some of these things that were based on the Journey to the West, and so it made for an enjoyable experience. I can't say how well, you know, because I've only read one version, but from my experience, this has got to be the best translation of Journey to the West that there is. It was somewhat difficult, as I said, to read just because of the visuals and the concepts that I was unfamiliar with. But the translator did his best to at strategic places put in end notes. There'd be a number, and then you could go look it up in the back, and that number would correspond to a note in the back that would explain further, give you more information about what this all meant. And so that helped quite a bit. But again, jumping back and forth between what I was reading and then to jump to the end to find the note that gave me more information did make the reading somewhat slower than it could have been. But again, I was grateful for it because it helped me in places where I didn't understand what was going on because I was unfamiliar with a concept or something that was a given to somebody who would have been reading this in Chinese. And just the language that they used. And I must say, Monkey King is a great character. In fact, I loved the whole series, but the first part where it talks about Monkey King is the best part. It's a good read. Don't get me wrong, it is a good read, but it is difficult. It's not going to be just sit down and it's going to be fluff reading. It's takes some perseverance to get through, but it's definitely worth it. Now, if you have questions or comments, please leave them down below. Like and subscribe as always, and if you click the notifications, you'll get notified when I post more videos. So in the future, just enjoy what you're reading.